Welcome to Unboxing the Toolkit. In this video, we'll briefly step you through what's included in the CBRS Toolkit. In a subsequent video called Exploring the Data, we'll discuss specific data sets in greater detail. You may have purchased the CBRS Toolkit. Alternatively, you may have downloaded the free demonstration. What you'll see is something that is similar to what you're seeing on the screen in front of you. This happens to be the state of Rhode Island. In the visual component of the toolkit, one can zoom in and zoom out to examine different geographies. And as you can see, kind of looking through these color areas, what is beneath the color blocks are actually houses and roads. And you can see individual houses and roads and oftentimes trees. So you can see that this data is quite high resolution. Within each data set, you can see the data visualized as colors. You can also turn on data labels, which give you a lot of information, although if you're zoomed out, it may be overwhelming. So that's something that can be turned on and off for each data layer. In the next few minutes, I'm going to step through the categories of data that are included in the toolkit, and then again, we'll discuss these in greater detail in the subsequent video. So first of all, there are geographic boundaries that help you understand the data that you're looking at. And they start at the nation and then go down to regions, divisions, states or territories, counties, tracts, block groups, and blocks. And you'll see many of those geographic boundaries represented here, and they can be turned on either with or without labels. And with the labels, they'll oftentimes display a particular block group as an example, so that you can easily relate this to spreadsheet data, which is also included in the toolkit, and we'll talk about it briefly. You can also turn roads on and off, again, with or without labels. You can also visualize most of the major license areas of the FCC that have been used to issue cellular-like licenses over the last couple decades. And these include CMAs, BTAs, MTAs, RPCs, EAs or BEAs, MEAs, REAs, EAGs, and PEAs. So basically, if you're doing planning in conjunction with an existing cellular operation, you can easily relate the data sets to current license holdings. With the CBRS auction, there are several sets of incumbent access users, and these include primarily naval vessels that operate naval radar, earth stations, and then grandfathered 3650 links. And we've got a section that basically visualizes each of these. Now, obviously, with the ship, you don't know where the ship's going to be, but you do know where naval facilities exist, and those are indications of a greater likelihood, presumably, of the use of naval radar. There are also things that are relevant to any investor. For instance, in the 2017 Tax Cuts and Jobs Act, they created what are called opportunity zones, which basically are areas that identify distressed communities that allow for either deferral or the exclusion of capital gains. So anyone who's coming in and building infrastructure should at least understand this concept, and certainly anyone who's interested in impact investing should also understand the concept. As we jump down into the next set of data, which is demographic, it's economic, and it's behavioral, there are a large number of other data sets. In demographics, you have population density and household density. And like many of the KPIs, the toolkit doesn't simply tell you these are the number of households. It converts it into a metric which is can be visualized in a consistent fashion across the country. So in this case, with population density, this is population per square kilometer. With household density, it would be household per square kilometer. And similarly, there are a number of metrics with income. So income per capita, mean household income, median household income, what we're calling income density, which is the income per capita times the people per square area, which is a very powerful metric. The Gini index. There are indications of need, such as participation levels in the SNAP program, aka food stamps, SSI, public assistance, percent of population living deemed to be living in poverty. There are a number of business metrics, for instance, business density, how many businesses per square mile exist within a certain area, employee density, payroll density. On housing, there are a number of metrics that are very carefully selected to be relevant to the telecommunications industry. For instance, if someone is planning to deploy fiber, for instance, to a multi-tenant dwelling, it makes a lot of difference how many units are within that dwelling. Or similarly, if you have an urban WISP who is planning on servicing a building, either with uniband or CBRS or millimeter wave, the economies of scale are very different if there are a lot of units within the building. So these metrics with the housing market give the user a lot of visibility into the different types of structures that exist. Also, importantly, right around the year 2000 was when data-oriented twisted pair started to be deployed. In the dominant standard was Cat5e, and so we've identified as one of the metrics the percentage of housing units that were built within an area after the year 2000 as opposed to before 2000. And again, this gives just some indication of the what might be done to deploy services in those areas. There are a number of metrics in terms of behavior. So device ownership, what percentage own desktops or laptops, own smartphones, what types of broadband access do households have? Do they have cable, fiber, DSL? Do they have satellite? Do they not have access? And there's a lot of data on deployed infrastructure. So the FCC collects on Form 477 extensive data about coverage footprints. Within this tool, we take all of those data sets and we create a number of very select views. One is the technology view, which just says which technologies are being deployed in each very specific area, and then similarly a performance view, which says what data speeds, and that would be with fixed technologies. And then there's a similar representation of mobile coverage. In the case of mobile, we look specifically at LTE and provide mobile operator footprints. And these two sets of coverage data are available in each of the state toolkits and in the everything analyzer. And they're very, very detailed and large data sets, and therefore are included in the set of tools that either cover small areas or are shipped as a physical product because they're large. Finally, there's some other categories of data here. For instance, there are several sets related to rural subsidy programs, specifically the Connect America Fund and the Mobility Fund Phase 2. And then there are other maps and databases. Anyway, hopefully this gives you a good overview of the visual toolkit. And in a moment, we will talk about some of the other pieces included in the package. There are two written documents that every toolkit user should read. The first is called the Introduction/User's Guide. It describes the many different data sets included in the tool in significant detail. It also describes the hierarchical relationship of different data sets and provides at least some high-level guidance on the different ways in which the toolkit could be used. If you plan on using the CBRS Toolkit, you should read this document cover to cover. A second document is the Getting Started Guide. It includes a couple pages of quick start steps. It includes frequently asked questions, and it includes troubleshooting. Finally, there's a spreadsheet component of the toolkit as well. When you unzip it, you'll see the visual toolkit. You'll see a lot of documentation, as you can see here. You'll also see a number of Excel spreadsheets. These include most of the components that appear visually within the toolkit, as well as a lot of other data that is actually not visualized just because it doesn't lend itself to being represented as a KPI, but is extremely valuable. So we'll explore these data sets in greater detail in some of the later videos. If you're new to the CBRS Toolkit, we encourage you to download the CBRS Toolkit trial version. As you can tell, it's free, and it's basically a fully functional toolkit over a limited geographic area, at least in terms of the visual components of the toolkit, which is what many people find extremely compelling. And if you experience any challenges in coming up to speed in using either the purchased or the trial version, we encourage you to reach out to us. We're happy to have conference calls or have Zoom sessions to help get you started in using these tools.